My life was a quiet rhythm, a predictable dance of days that blurred into one another. At 52, I'd settled into the kind of routine that felt safe, if not fulfilling. Our house, a cozy two-story in a leafy neighborhood, was filled with the hum of familiarity. My husband, David, with his steady job and his evening ritual of watching sports, me with my part-time work at the library and my endless to-do lists. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. But there was a restlessness in me, a whisper of something missing, like a song I couldn't quite remember. That was before Ethan came to stay. Before everything I thought I knew about myself unraveled. Ethan was David's cousin, 10 years younger than me, with a smile that could charm the stars from the sky. He'd always been the family's golden boy, wild in his youth, now tamed by a corporate job but still carrying that spark of mischief. When his apartment flooded, David didn't hesitate to offer our guest room. "Just for a few weeks," he said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder like they were brothers. I nodded, smiled, played the gracious hostess. But from the moment Ethan walked through our door, dragging a duffel bag and a cloud of cologne, I felt it, a shift, like the air before a storm. He was different from David in every way. Where David was solid and predictable, Ethan was all sharp edges and restless energy. He'd sprawl on our couch, his long legs stretched out, telling stories of his travels, Barcelona, Tokyo, places I'd only read about. His eyes would lock onto mine as he spoke, lingering just a second too long, and I'd feel a flush creep up my neck. I told myself it was nothing, just the novelty of a new face in our quiet house. But the truth was, Ethan saw me in a way David hadn't in years. Not as the wife who ironed his shirts or made his coffee, but as a woman, alive and full of possibilities. It was the third night of his stay, a humid August evening that clung to the skin. David was working late, as usual, leaving me and Ethan to fill the silence. We were in the kitchen, me chopping vegetables for dinner, him leaning against the counter with a glass of red wine. The radio played softly, some old jazz tune that made the air feel heavier. He was talking about his last trip, something about a midnight market in Marrakesh, but I was only half listening, too aware of his proximity. He stepped closer, reaching past me for the wine bottle, and his arm brushed mine. It was fleeting, innocent, but it sent a jolt through me, like touching a live wire. "You're different here," he said suddenly, his voice low, cutting through the music. I froze, the knife hovering over a carrot. "Different how?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my throat was tight. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set his glass down, his fingers grazing the counter as he turned to face me. "You're alive," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Not just going through the motions. I see it, even if you don't." My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm that drowned out the jazz. I should have laughed it off, changed the subject, but I didn't. I let his words sink in, let them awaken something I'd buried long ago. The kitchen felt too small, the air too thick. He was so close now, close enough that I could smell the wine on his breath, feel the heat radiating from him. "Ethan," I started, my voice barely a whisper, but I didn't know what I wanted to say. "Stop? Leave? Or something else entirely?" His hand reached out, slow and deliberate, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered, tracing the curve of my jaw, and I didn't pull away. Every nerve in my body was screaming, danger, betrayal, desire, and I was caught in the crossfire. "You deserve to feel this," he murmured, and then he kissed me. It was sudden, fierce, a collision of need and recklessness. His lips were warm, insistent, and for a moment, I was lost in it, my hands gripping his shirt, pulling him closer. The world shrank to the taste of wine, the press of his body, the rush of being wanted so fiercely. But then reality slammed into me like a cold wave. This was Ethan, David's cousin, in my kitchen, in my home. I pushed him back, my breath ragged, my lips tingling with the ghost of his kiss. "We can't," I gasped, stepping away, my hands shaking. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but he didn't move closer. "No one has to know," he said, his voice calm, almost pleading. "Just us." Just this. I turned away, gripping the counter to steady myself. My mind was a storm, guilt, fear, and that traitorous spark of want. What if David came home early? What if someone saw? The life I'd built, the vows I'd made, felt like they were crumbling under the weight of that one moment. Ethan watched me, silent, and I could feel his gaze like a touch. "Please," I said, my voice breaking, "don't say anything. This never happened." He nodded, but there was something in his expression, something that made my stomach twist. I didn't trust him to stay silent. I didn't trust myself to forget. He left the kitchen, his footsteps fading down the hall, and I stood there, alone with the jazz and the half-chopped vegetables. The secret we'd created was a living thing, pulsing in the silence, and I knew it would haunt me. I just didn't know how much it would cost. The kitchen was never the same after that night. Every time I stood at the counter, chopping onions or wiping down the stove, I could feel it, the ghost of Ethan's kiss, the heat of his breath, the way my body had betrayed me in a single, reckless moment. I was 52, a wife, a woman who'd built a life on steadiness, and yet I'd let myself fall into something so dangerous, so wrong. The guilt was a weight, heavy and unyielding, but worse was the other feeling, the one I couldn't admit even to myself. I wanted more. And that terrified me. David didn't notice a thing. He'd come home that night, tired and distracted, talking about spreadsheets and deadlines, while I nodded and smiled, my heart racing with the secret I was carrying. Ethan was still in the guest room, his presence like a shadow I couldn't shake. I avoided him as best I could, keeping busy with errands, staying late at the library, anything to keep distance between us. But our house was small, and Ethan was everywhere, his laugh in the living room, his cologne lingering in the hall, his eyes catching mine when David wasn't looking. Each glance was a spark, threatening to reignite what I was desperate to extinguish. By the end of the week, I was unraveling. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't stop replaying that kiss, the way his hands had felt, the way I'd wanted to lose myself in him. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse, and I'd be stronger now. But Ethan wasn't making it easy. He'd find reasons to be near me, brushing past me in the hallway, his voice low and teasing when he asked for coffee or commented on the weather. It was subtle enough that David didn't notice, but I did. I felt every moment like a current pulling me under. It was Saturday night, a week after the kiss, when it all came crashing down again. David was asleep, his snores echoing through the house, and I was in the laundry room, folding towels to keep my hands busy. The clock read midnight, the house dark except for the soft glow of the kitchen light. I thought I was alone, thought I could steal a moment to breathe, but then I heard footsteps. Ethan stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing a worn t-shirt and jeans, his hair tousled like he'd just woken up. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice soft but laced with something dangerous. I clutched a towel, my pulse hammering. "Just finishing up," I said, avoiding his eyes, but he didn't move. He stepped closer, the air between us thickening with every inch. "You've been avoiding me," he said, not accusing but stating a fact. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the lie stuck in my throat. He was right, and he knew it. He stopped just short of touching me, his gaze heavy, searching. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, and the words were a match to dry tinder. My resolve, so carefully built, crumbled under the weight of his voice, his nearness. I should have walked away, should have locked myself in my room, but instead, I let him close the distance. The laundry room became our world, a cramped space filled with the hum of the dryer and the scent of detergent. His hands found my waist, pulling me against him, and I didn't resist. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, a surrender rather than a collision. My hands slid under his shirt, tracing the warmth of his skin, and every touch was a step further into the abyss. We moved to the couch in the living room, the darkness shielding us, and there, in the silence of the sleeping house, we crossed a line we could never uncross. It wasn't just a kiss anymore, it was a secret carved into my soul, a betrayal that felt like freedom and damnation all at once. When it was over, reality hit like a slap. I pulled away, my breath ragged, my clothes disheveled. David was upstairs, sleeping, trusting, and I'd let this happen under his roof. This can't keep happening, I whispered, my voice trembling. Ethan's eyes were dark, unreadable, but he nodded. It's our secret, he said, his tone calm, almost too calm. No one has to know. But his words didn't reassure me. They felt like a chain, binding me to him, to this moment, to the lie I'd have to live. I stumbled back to the laundry room, my hands shaking as I folded the last towel, trying to anchor myself in something normal. But nothing was normal anymore. And then, as I turned to leave, I saw it, a flicker of movement outside the window. The backyard was dark, but there was a shadow, a shape that didn't belong. My heart stopped. Had someone seen us? A neighbor? Or worse, had David woken up, gone looking for me? I froze, staring into the night, but the shadow was gone, leaving only questions and a cold dread in its wake. The secret was ours, but for how long? And what would it cost to keep it? That shadow outside the window haunted me. It was there and then gone, a fleeting glimpse that turned my blood to ice and made every creak in the house feel like a warning. Had someone seen us? Was it a neighbor, peering through the dark, or worse, David, awake and suspicious? The thought gnawed at me, a relentless claw in my chest. I was 52, a woman who'd prided herself on control, on loyalty, and yet I'd let Ethan pull me into a secret that was unraveling my life. The guilt was suffocating, but so was the truth. Even now, after everything, a part of me ached for him. And that was the worst betrayal of all. I barely slept that night, lying beside David, his steady breathing a cruel reminder of what I'd risked. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, felt his hands, heard his whispered promise, no one has to know. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out, and I could feel this one growing, pressing against the walls of my perfect little life. I avoided Ethan the next day, staying out of the house as long as I could, but his presence was inescapable. His duffel bag in the hall, his coffee mug on the counter, his voice calling out to David like nothing had happened. He was playing the part of the charming cousin, but I saw the truth in his glances, hungry, knowing, daring me to break again. By Monday, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to end this, to confront him, to make him understand that what we'd done was a mistake we couldn't repeat. David was at work, and the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every thought. I found Ethan in the guest room, packing his things, his movements slow, deliberate. "You're leaving?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He turned, his eyes locking onto mine, and that familiar spark flickered between us. "Thought it might be easier," he said, but there was something in his tone, something that made my stomach twist. "Easier for who?" I shot back, stepping closer despite myself. The room felt too small, the air charged with everything we weren't saying. He set down the shirt he was folding and crossed the distance between us, his gaze never wavering. "You're scared," he said, not a question but a challenge. "Scared of what this means. Scared of what you want." My breath caught, his words slicing through my defenses. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the truth was there, burning in my chest. I did want him, his attention, his touch, the way he made me feel alive. But I hated him for it, hated myself more. "This has to stop," I said, my voice trembling. "You need to leave. Now." But Ethan didn't back down. He reached for me, his hand grazing my arm, and I flinched, torn between pulling away and leaning in. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice low, urgent. "And I know you feel it too. Why fight it?" His words were a siren's call, and for a moment I wavered, my body remembering the couch, the laundry room, the rush of being wanted. But then I saw David's face in my mind, his trust, his love, and I yanked my arm free. "You don't get to decide what I want," I snapped. This was a mistake. All of it. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but his next words stopped me cold. "What if David already knows?" he said, his tone calm, almost cruel. I froze, my blood running cold. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, turning to face him. He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "I saw him that night," he said. "Outside. Looking through the window." The world tilted, my knees buckling as the pieces fell into place. The shadow. It wasn't a neighbor. It was David. My husband, watching as I betrayed him with his own cousin. I clutched the door frame, my vision blurring. "You're lying," I said, but my voice was weak, desperate. Ethan didn't flinch. "Am I?" he asked, and the question was a blade. I stumbled out of the room, my mind a storm of panic and dread. I checked my phone, half expecting a message from David, a confrontation, anything. But there was nothing, just silence, and somehow that was worse. When David came home that evening, he was quiet, distant, his eyes avoiding mine. I tried to act normal, to make dinner, to ask about his day, but every word felt like a lie. And then, as we sat at the table, he set his fork down and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "Is there something you need to tell me?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with pain. The truth spilled out before I could stop it, a halting, tear-soaked confession of the kiss, the couch, the moments I couldn't take back. I didn't mention the shadow, didn't dare ask if he'd seen, but the weight in his eyes told me everything. He didn't shout, didn't storm out. He just stood, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. Ethan was gone by morning, his things cleared out, leaving only the wreckage of my marriage. David and I tried to rebuild, to talk, to heal, but the trust was shattered, the pieces too jagged to fit back together. We separated a month later, the house sold, the life I'd known reduced to boxes and memories. I never saw Ethan again, but his shadow lingered, a reminder of the woman I'd been in those fleeting moments, reckless, alive, and utterly lost. The secret had cost me everything, but worse, it left me wondering if I'd ever truly known myself. And that question, more than anything, was the one I'd carry forever.